Welcome back on into the barbershop. It's your guy G Bush back at you with another breaking news story from the Cleveland Browns. John Johnson, as you guys may have known, has been released by the Cleveland Browns. He will be released by the Browns. It can save them in cap space up to $9.75 million. We will get into that. But first, just because the Browns are missing a safety does not mean you take lightly your family's safety when it comes to your information online. I cover the Browns and multiple different professional leagues. I know all too well how important privacy is to professional athletes. But let me tell you this, that's just not for athletes. It's for regular people like myself. As a media member, I always have to protect my image. Anyone can find anything on the internet, including your full legal name, your personal email, your home address, phone number, and even your relatives' information. Just by doing a simple Google search, you can see how quickly people can find my information. This information is accessible because of data brokers who profit by selling your information to robocallers, telemarketers, spammers, and anyone else that wants to learn more about you. That's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura will identify data brokers that are exposing your information and automatically submit opt-out requests on your behalf. They'll even opt you out of junk mail and telemarketing lists. Go to aura.com/Garrett Bush to start your free trial. Also linked below in the description, or simply scan the QR code. I've been a really staunch critic of John Johnson III. When he got here, he was supposed to be one of the guys that we depended on to fill the alley, one of the guys that we thought was a playmaker. And what we found out very quickly was that John Johnson didn't do anything tremendously well. He wasn't in the box safety. If you look at his PFF numbers, he's consistently been worse in tackling since he's got here. He isn't a really great cover safety. He does not have tremendous speed. He didn't have tremendous awareness. He does not have quick twitch ability. And he seems to not be a guy that can really diagnose complex defenses. So when you get a guy like John Johnson and he's your free agent, it really puts you behind the eight ball because you're counting on that guy to get you turnovers. You're counting on that guy to be able to lock down the secondary and be able to communicate with people back there. But the crazy thing about it was John Johnson came here, and it's respectfully. It's no knock against him and his family or whatever the case may be. When John Johnson got here, we looked at it like we were actually going to be getting one of those playmakers. If you look at one of the playmakers and the guys that have been in this division, Ed Reed, even going back to Rod Woodson, Troy Polamalu, right? Those individuals are guys who roam the middle of the field and are dominant. Those guys can move sideline to sideline. They can freelance. They got great awareness. And John Johnson just didn't have that sort of pedigree. And furthermore, I just want to drill down on this just a little bit more. This is what I would call the unintended consequences of development. And you say, G. Bush, what does that mean? Well, anytime you go into free agency, free agents are free agents because nobody else was willing to sign them, right? Their original team either decided that they could find a replacement for a more cost-effective measure, that either they weren't worth the money or the contract that they have, or if they didn't feel that they were a good fit anymore moving forward because they didn't have the same type of athletic ability. And so when you get someone from another organization, by default, a free agent signing is very risky. And I'll just throw that out there. The draft is risky. Free agents are risky. And if you look at it, and somebody did tell me, I argue back and forth with people online all the time. They said, G. Bush, name one free agent for the Cleveland Browns that came in and made a tremendous stake in the organization, who made an impact, who put a stamp on the organization. And I said, let me think. The only guy that I can think that came in from the outside, I would say Jarvis Landry. I think Jarvis Landry gave us a tremendous lot at the receiving position. I think he did a lot to kind of flip the culture a little bit. And to me, he was the first big name guy to come here, 1,000-yard receiver in Miami, and was already putting up big numbers then. Then he got here, and I think he helped change the way the Browns were perceived. So I would say his name. But other than that, I could give you thousands of other guys that came here and didn't do anything. Dwayne Bowe, You had guys like at the end of their career, like Willis McGahee, guys like Willie McGinnis, guys like Paul Kruger. These guys are guys that got here, Dante Whitner, guys that got here and not necessarily were in their prime, and the team struggled. So I'll just say that moving forward in anything that you do, free agency is going to be a crapshoot, right? Free agency is all about figuring out if you can get somebody and how well they translate to your system, because you don't know what they were running. When I looked at John Johnson and I looked at the way that the Rams were playing him, and when he got here, the way they were asking him to play in Cleveland, I knew he wasn't going to have the production numbers that he needed. John Johnson was as a guy that can be down inside the 10 yard mark, inside the 5. He's in the box. He's doing different things. But when you make him play, the high safety, and you're asking Grant Delpit as well to cover and do things, both of those guys are almost like strong safeties. They don't have the best ball skills. They don't have the best cover skills. So when they told him, when I looked at the position that Joe Woods had him playing, I said, it's going to be hard pressed for him to get his money off here. And so I want to drill down and go back to what I was saying before. I kind of talked about that. And I was talking about these are the unintended consequences of not developing. So when I watch the Kansas City Chiefs, when I watch these teams in the playoffs, these teams are getting 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round picks, and they're developing them. They're getting them better throughout the season. They're getting them reps. When somebody else goes down, they plug and play. I look at the Kansas City Chiefs and their whole secondary. Rookies, 6th, 7th round picks. And that just goes to show you when you can develop somebody, or when you hit on these guys, you now have guys in your system 3 to 4 years able to produce at a very low rate. So a lot of times people don't get is, yes, it is not about the fact that you missed on some people, right? It's not the fact that, you may not have a cap space. But when you have a quarterback, and I think the Browns have to realize this, when you have a quarterback and you're paying them all this money, you can't afford to miss on those picks like we were doing before. See, before we were operating on all those rookie deals, all those deals which you got guys that are under contract for cheap money, for guys that are going to have a 5th-year option, and you're trying to develop a quarterback. But then when you're doing that, you could allocate money to receivers, allocate money to offensive line, different other places. Now the Browns are going to be in a position where they got to operate differently. Excuse me, you got to operate a little differently. And so now, when you don't hit on guys year after year, the Jordan Elliott's, the Anthony Schwartz, the David Bells, I know he's a young guy. We'll see what he does next year. The Greedy Williams, when you don't hit on those guys, now what happens? You don't have the depth. You don't have guys that can step up, and you're going to have to pay high price free agents who you don't know if they actually translate to your scheme or not, in a la John Johnson, a la Troy Hill. Think about that. Troy Hill was such a bad fit for them. They had to then go back and take Troy Hill and give him back to the Rams. That's crazy. That year they got drafted Takk McKinley. Not drafted, but they went and got Takk McKinley. He ended up tearing his ACL and tearing his Achilles heel. So that whole class a couple of years ago, where you get a guy like Takk McKinley, who's a speed rusher. You also get a guy like John Johnson, right? You also get Troy Hill. You're thinking these guys are supposed to bolster everything up. It's the problem with free agents, man. It's the problem with free agency. You never know what you're going to get. And to be truthful, you can't never count on those guys being super over the top productive, because you don't know if the system translates. So for John Johnson, I think he was a good dude in the locker room. From all the media members I talked to, he was a guy that everybody enjoyed talking to. Everybody enjoyed being around. He's a good dude from all intents and purposes, all counts. But the Cleveland Browns needed to go in a different direction, and I think this was the move. And if you've been watching me, I've been predicting and telling you about this way back at the beginning of the year. A lot of people gave it and benefited it out, but you have to tell yourself, you have to ask yourself, how many teams do you see in the beginning of the season where it's like teams are just trotting behind? I just got tired of seeing John Johnson and Delpit and Denzel Ward just turn around and look at each other like, whose man is it? Like game after game, the Jets game, that happened. You take a look at some of those other these huge busts. Carolina Panthers game happened that way. So as far as I'm concerned, this was a move that they needed to make. I think John Johnson will find another job on the market. And now we look what the Cleveland Browns need to do. Now the next step up, talking about this part two, is Jessie Bates. Now I'm a little torn on Jessie Bates because I don't think the Browns need a free safety. I don't understand why that this has become the big marquee position. You know, there's a lot of people saying Jessie Bates is going to be the Browns' big splash in free agency, and I'm just going to tell you, I don't see it. I mean, if you're thinking about it like in terms of Jessie Bates, he's a really good player, and I think he'd be an upgrade for the Browns with what they're trying to do. But for me, Jessie Bates is not the end-all be-all at safety. If they can get him for the right price, I'll take him. But I would much rather have a guy like a Bobby Wagner. I would much rather have a guy like that. Because I'm not counting, if your safeties is leading in tackles, you're in trouble anyway. You're in trouble anyway. So I'd much rather have a guy like Bobby Wagner, and I believe that Bobby Wagner is the guy that the Browns should be targeting as a free agent fine. And I'm telling you, I think he upgrades us tremendously. And it's just about the philosophy of how you stop the run. We saw how he was getting gashed back before. We had two safeties, Delpit and John Johnson, lead the team in tackles. How'd that work for us? I think we can't keep diminishing linebackers and then keep wondering why every single year we can't stop the run. I mean, when have the Browns ever had a linebacker that was nasty? I mean, like, you got to think about it. The best linebacker we had in all these years was DeQuell Jackson. That's the only linebacker I can think of besides, you know, and then you got Clay Matthews that played back in the day. You know, Chip Banks and Pepper Johnson played a little, but we haven't had the James Harrisons. We haven't had the Joey Porters. We haven't had the Ray Lewises, the Sackmaster Terrell Suggs. We have not had those type of linebackers here in this division. And so I would like to see them to go get a guy like Bobby Wagner and solidify that. So with that being said, I'm going to let y'all ride out. Always keep subscribing to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you keep all of the breaking news. We'll repeat it one more time. Safety John Johnson of the Cleveland Browns will be released by March 15th. The Browns will save $9.75 million in cap space. Keep it locked. As the stories come out, the barbershop will keep you in touch. Coming back up, we'll talk to you about why I feel defensive tackle is not the most needed position in the offseason. And I'll tell you which position they could target to take the Browns to the next level. As always, it's your boy G Bush. Make sure you follow me at GBush91 on Twitter. Make sure you hit that notification bell and subscribe to the Barbershop channel. As always, peace.